Hello, everyone. Welcome. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hard Targets, open source intel for the people, by the people. News from a multipolar world. This is Teray, bringing you the news from today. Geopolitics as we inch ever towards World War III, baby. Ever closer to World War III. I'm just going to take a second to make sure people got access to the live stream. Want people to come in. Welcome everyone tuning in after we get off this live. We're just getting started. This is my second live stream. So we're not going to have, a whole lot of people in the live while it's happening. So I do appreciate you for sticking around after the fact. Welcome. We got news for you today from the Telegram chats. A little article from Reuters. I don't know if anyone had heard the news or if anyone believes in the science anymore. If you just happen to believe the science, well, the scientists who are talking to Reuters saying that the apocalypse is imminent. I know they've been saying that for decades, child. I know they've been saying it for decades. But the whole doomsday clock, the little clock that they have, that the closer it gets to midnight, the closer we are to imminent apocalypse. Well, they're saying it's the closest we've ever been in the history of the nuclear weaponry. That's going to be fun. We're going to talk about that. So that's everything in the chat. Oh, right. Yeah, since we are just getting this channel started, you can make sure to follow me on Twitter. You can make sure to follow my Telegram channel. I'm trying to start up Telegram as well, because you can't trust the internet. My Twitter is already shut down temporarily. They had to shut me down for encouraging local Atlanta police to arrest. We'll use polite language, and encouraging them to arrest Antifa feds during the Antifa Day of Rage that was happening, where they were looting and burning. I went onto Twitter and I had some opinions, just telling the good people of Atlanta that just let the cops rough them up a bit. Let them dissuade any of their comrades from the rest of the country from flying into Atlanta to burn and loot. We ain't got time. We ain't got time for that nonsense. So yeah, there's the Telegram channel right there, but it's the same socials all across social media. At Hard Targets Intel, like it says right there in the banner, at Hard Targets Intel on TikTok, on YouTube, on Telegram, not on Twitter. You can follow my personal account at IronSunUSA if you want to follow me on Twitter. But with all this formal stuff out of the way, let's get into it. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to read this article from Reuters about the imminent apocalypse and what that means. Why are we so close to midnight in this nuclear apocalypse? Why are we so close to midnight? You see that? Yeah. So Reuters says doomsday clock moves to 90 seconds. Nuclear threat rises. So I think it's a little appropriate here. That wasn't intentional. The fact that I'm streaming so late, does. So there's a little accidental genius I'll take credit for. There were 90 seconds to midnight as the power of the atom. We are uh, so the so not surprised that the people who are telling us to trust the science are also putting climate change as part of like this apocalyptic vision for creating fear and terror in the population. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you knew that they were putting in climate apocalypse on the nuclear apocalypse clock. That's part of their calculations. The Doomsday Clock, created by the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists to illustrate how close humanity has come to the end of the world, moved its time in 2023 to 90 seconds to midnight, 10 seconds closer than it has been for the past 3 years, which is interesting because there was no like nuclear threat. There was no nuclear threat, in 2020. Which begs the question: why was it so close to midnight 3 years ago? Let's continue. Midnight on this clock marks the theoretical point of annihilation. The clock's hands are moved closer to or further away from midnight based on scientists' reading of existential threats at a particular time. The new time reflects a world in which Russia's invasion of Ukraine has revived fears of nuclear war. And to be clear, all the threats of nuclear annihilation are coming from the United States. All the escalation in this war coming from the United States and from Ukraine. Just want to point that out. Russia's thinly veiled threats to use nuclear weapons remind the world that escalation of the conflict by accident, intention, or miscalculation is a terrible risk. The possibilities that the conflict could spin out of anyone's control remain high. Rachel Bronson, the Bulletin's president and CEO, told a news conference in Washington on Tuesday. The Bulletin's announcement will for the first time be translated from English into Ukrainian and Russian to garner relevant attention. And it's funny how they don't want to garner relevant attention to the fact that it's Russia's restraint, the Russian restraint to U.S. and NATO aggression that has marked every escalation of this war has been defined by U.S. aggression tempered by Russian restraint. But that's not a part of the relevant attention that they want to give to people. Moving on, a Chicago-based nonprofit organization, the Bulletin updates the clock time annually based on information regarding catastrophic risks to the planet and humanity, which we now know doesn't just include nuclear threats, but also biological threats, climate threats. So yeah, that's important. We'll get to that. The organization's board of scientists and other experts in nuclear technology and climate science, including 13 Nobel laureates, discuss world events and determine where to place the hands of the clock each year. Apocalyptic threats reflected by the clock include politics, weapons, politics. We're going to be politicked to death. Trust the science. We're going to be politicked to death. Weapons, technology, climate change, and pandemics. The clock has been set to 100 seconds to midnight since 2020, which was already the closest it had ever come to midnight. 2020. So what do we know about 2020? That this nonprofit would want to, include in their visions of apocalypse. What happened? What? If you had to guess off the top of your head, what event happened in 2020? Some apocalyptic nightmare. So everything that is happening in Europe, this war that is going on, is now more apocalyptic than everything that happened in 2020 and all the events that that were related. Think about that. Think about what's coming. This this alarmism, this of Russian, Russian suicidal nuclear apocalypse. Think about who is actually pushing us closer to apocalypse, closer than a total annihilation and total chaos than we were 3 years ago in 2020. That says a lot about about the strategies that are found, like that the Ukraine war is resting upon. That is a testing ground for. Because we are this, it is, this is not where U.S. and NATO aggression ends. It is a testing ground, same as the Spanish Civil War was a testing ground for new kinds of warfare and technology during right before World War II. Ukraine is the same exact scenario. It's a testing ground for an escalation of apocalypse. Reuters goes on to say, the board said the war in Ukraine has also heightened the risk that biological weapons could be deployed if the conflict continue. And again, it is really ironic talking about other people, like being scared that other people are at risk of using biological weapons, considering, the Eco Health Alliance was not funded by the Russian government. I will tell you that much. The continuing stream of disinformation about bioweapon laboratories in Ukraine. Okay, maybe I'll skip that part because I don't want to be I don't want to be taken off of YouTube before my channel has a chance to grow. So, but you get the idea of how they come to calculate how close the minute hand comes to midnight in terms of total annihilation. So we're gonna again. Global carbon dioxide emissions from burning fossil fuels, after having rebounded from the COVID economic decline to an all-time high in 2021, continue to rise in 2022 and hit another record high. With emissions still rising, weather extremes continue and were even more clearly attributable to climate change. You can start to see how, like, you start to wonder to yourself what else they're going to throw in, what other Democrat psychoses are they going to throw into calculating this doomsday clock. What have we got so far? Nuclear annihilation, biological weapons, climate change apocalypses, and we don't have to. I do not have to put on my tinfoil hat to know like what this means in terms of the security strategies for 2023, considering we already went through biological warfare in 2020. I'm going to go too much into it. I don't want to get my channel taken down, but we already went through that in 2020, and now these liberal scientists and Reuters are saying we are now closer to annihilation than we were 3 years ago. Climate change and explicitly citing climate change. After knowing what happened in 2020, explicitly citing climate change as something we need to handle. And the World Economic Forum also citing climate change as as a major as a major threat to be handled. That says a lot about where U.S. Security strategies are headed for the next year, and how Ukraine plays a part in that. The clock was created in 1947. Blah, blah, blah. We don't need to know the history of it. Yes. Again, they always hide the most relevant information in the last paragraph. I thought this is why this last paragraph is why I wanted to really talk about this article, and where U.S. Priorities are in terms of what rolling back the apocalypse looks like. At 17 minutes to midnight, the clock was furthest from Doomsday in 1991, as the Cold War ended and the United States and Soviet Union signed a treaty that substantially reduced both countries' nuclear weapons arsenals. They're talking about perestroika. If you're watching this after we've gone live, if you're watching this and you made it this far, thank you. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you. But I want you to read that paragraph again and really think about what unipolar American security means based on their vision of apocalypse, a vision of apocalypse that is being pursued by NATO, by the United States, by their proxy war in Ukraine. At 17 minutes to midnight, the clock was furthest from Doomsday in 1991 as the Cold War ended and the United States and Soviet Union signed a treaty that substantially reduced both countries' nuclear weapons arsenals. First of all, I find it amazing that we've the furthest we've ever been from nuclear apocalypse is 17 minutes. The furthest, the safest we've ever been from a total annihilation. Already pretty telling about the state of total war that that the U.S. State Department has kept us in for the past 80 years. But more importantly, what happened in 1991 that merits this definition of the safest the world has ever been from total annihilation? Oh, I got one person in the room here. Thank you, one person. Oh, they gone now. That's okay. What do we know happened in 1991? That they're that they're the way they phrase this is hilarious. As the Cold War ended, just apropos of nothing, the Cold War just ended, and the Soviet Union just magically signed a treaty that substantially reduced both countries' nuclear weapons arsenal in 1991, the same year that the Soviet Union collapsed after a coup backed by the United States, totally gutted their government, totally collapsed the second most powerful country at the time in human history, totally collapsed the USSR, the number one rival to the United States military hegemony on planet Earth. That is when we were safest from annihilation, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So according to these climate scientists and these Chicago-based liberals and think tank experts, according to the Pentagon, you are safest when the United States is going around starting coups in other countries that threaten military power. That is, it's the reason I found this article is on Telegram, and from Dmitry Medvedev, the former president and current head of the Russian Security Council, who had said about the article, on how to move back the 90-second mark of the Doomsday Clock. He said, "Let the watchmakers Biden and Scholz, Olaf Scholz, the Prime Minister of Germany, stop the ticking of atomic clocks for a while. To do this, they need to understand that the Ukrainian arrow has long been rusty." The watchmakers Biden and Scholz. The implication being that they are the ones who are getting us closer and closer to nuclear annihilation. The watchmakers, Biden and Scholz. And the other implication there being that it's not just the United States that is defining the direction of this Ukrainian arrow, it's also Germany, the German government and the German military specifically. That's important. I have a couple other articles here pulled up that really, and this is the thumbnail that I'm going to be putting on this live stream. I talked about it yesterday, but we can already start to see the direction that as we approach the 1-year anniversary of the beginning of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine, the effects of this in terms of U.S. Security strategies in Europe and in the world. I'm going to pull up the next article here. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but basically, as I talked about yesterday, Germany was, on the fence, not for very long, about sending their Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. They had been debating it, going back and forth, pros and cons of sending some of their best manufactured weaponry to aid in Ukraine as they're preparing to push back against Russia's planned offensive in the spring, marking a very big escalation of this land war. The biggest land war that Europe has ever seen since the end of World War II. Tanks are being close. I might have to close and tab. Maybe that'll help. Ooh, sorry about that, folks. Um, looks like uh, looks like I'll have to get better internet connection. Looks like I'm gonna have to get better internet connection, to share screen. But I'll put the title of the video on the banner here. This is from Spiegel, from a German news site, and that's Germany has agreed to send Leopard tanks. Officially, they're going to be sending Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine to bulk up their ability to push back against the Russian offensive come the spring, the planned Russian offensive in the spring, which marks their return of tank warfare to the European continent. And we can already start to see why the doomsday clock is as close to midnight as it's ever been, is because the prologue for World War III that I had talked about yesterday on the live stream, it has played out. Germany has given the okay for it, not only its government, but every other government in Europe and the world that has licensed not licensed, I don't know what the phrase we use, but has purchased, leased, I guess you would say, that has leased Leopard 2 tanks, some of the best tanks manufactured on planet Earth. They all now have the green light to be sending their tanks, because it's part of the contract of buying these tanks from the German government is that you must get German permission before releasing these tanks to other countries. And Zelensky, I think it was Zelensky, has stated that he wants up to 400 of these tanks sent to Ukraine to bolster their defenses come the spring. 400 tanks. And as I said yesterday in the live stream, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it, brush up on it, because you need to get prepared for the apocalypse. If you haven't seen my live stream from yesterday, the implications of sending German tanks to Ukraine doesn't just mean that the tanks are going to get replenished from Germany moving forward. The trend here is that all tanks that were, because if Ukraine is the boneyard for outdated military equipment in every country in NATO, then the tanks that will be replacing the Leopard 2s in Germany, in Poland, already in Poland, in France, and in Asia, specifically South Korea, is with United States Abrams tanks. The German decision to clean out its entire entire clientele, Germany being the 5th largest weapons exporter in the world, behind the United States, Russia, France, China, and then Germany's number 5. So already the United States and NATO security strategy is to force Germany to commit economic suicide and gut its military might, its clout in being able to export weapons, gut that entire part of its industry. This is the largest economy in the EU, and just telling them that they're going to have to commit economic suicide. They will have no They must sacrifice their geopolitical clout on the altar of this Ukraine war. That is the long-term implications of this. Is further, yes, taking Germany out of the top five and pushing South Korea up into replace that spot. If you look at the top 10 weapons manufacturing, South Korea is number 8. I believe it's number 8, and more significantly, that its output of weapons has tripled in the past 4 years. Tripled, gone up by 170%, and that's only going up as as South Korea becomes a U.S. partner in supplying aircrafts, ships, and weaponry, which we can already see. When the Ukraine war starts to wind down in a year or two, or whenever Russia finally defeats Ukraine, the U.S. wants to use this newfound centralization of military power and military, weapons distribution to escalate the conflict in the South China Sea and the Strait of Taiwan, to force a World War III. And this is not just speculation. I don't have to put my tinfoil hat on. Taiwan has long since been the site of tension, and we can't stop hearing about it. And again, I wish I could share my screen without. Maybe I can try to share my screen again. We'll try it because just really. Well, I'll show. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, if all these news publications that publish that are mouthpieces for think tanks and for American think tanks, all are pushing for how the Taiwan angle in the Ukraine war. Foreign Affairs had published this, when you get a sense for how these think tanks, the people who influence strategy in Washington and the State Department, when you get a sense for how they think, of what they want you to think, and it's clear that forcing Germany to commit economic suicide and give up its clout in distributing its arms exports, putting South Korea in its place, putting Japan in a top spot as well. All of these countries in the South China Sea, conveniently in this theater of potential warfare. Ukraine is the testing ground for centralizing that military export of technology. Let's see, where is so here's the article. Hopefully my Wi-Fi doesn't crap out on me, but this is from Foreign Affairs, written by two people from two different think tanks. One of them being the German Marshall Foundation. Liana Fix, who's part of the German Marshall Foundation, which is an American think tank influencing German diplomacy, German foreign policy. Germany being the largest economy in the European Union, it makes sense for the United States to want to influence their foreign policy so that they can be one and the same. Here is their article in Foreign Affairs. The bullhorn of American think tanks, the bullhorn of American intervention, and the strategy of American intervention, saying that Germany must not only was it not enough. It wasn't enough that Germany decoupled its economy from Russia, that it followed the U.S.'s advice to commit economic. Well, not advice. The U.S. forced Germany to commit economic suicide by cutting it off from cheap Russian natural gas and oil and buying natural gas and oil at 3 times the price from the United States. That's not enough. It must also reduce its reliance on China. China, by the way, being the largest trade partner with Germany outside of Europe. Like these American think tanks, just saying again and again that Germany, your economy is you need to sacrifice your economy for the good of world peace. You need to sacrifice your economy so that we can get the minute hand of the nuclear clock away from midnight. You need to sacrifice your economy for the good of Ukraine. You need to sacrifice your economy so we can get back at China. That didn't work out so well, after World War I, when the U.S. was spearheading the same exact treatment of Germany, sacrificing their entire economy to prop up U.S. hegemony. I don't know if anyone remembers, basic middle school history. That did not work out so well between the periods of 1919 and 1939. So, historical trends aside, this is clearly the direction that the U.S. foreign policy and the global security strategy is moving towards. Is turning Germany, like not just Ukraine, becoming the testing ground for different types of warfare and economic, economic shock, shock treatment of what Naomi Klein calls disaster capitalism, but also, using Germany as the arrow. Is the Ukraine, the sort of when what Dmitry Medvedev calls the Ukrainian arrow, Germany being the one to, being the bow, and the United States the one pulling the bow back. It's our main partner in Europe to define this direction of setting the stage for World War III and nuclear annihilation. This person here as well, Liana Fix, her spooktacular think tank, the German Marshall Foundation. Let me share my screen for the German Marshall Foundation. But yeah, it becomes even more apparent when you look at these think tanks. Let me just share the window. Ooh, that's enough. Wi-Fi still that's good. Let's come on. Yeah. So global implications of China's rise. Over here, China's shifting foreign policy, watching China, Europe, China in the Middle East. You scroll down, Asia program, Stockholm, China forum, China global podcast, watching China in Europe, featured content. The war in Ukraine turns the with China. China. Entire think tank from top to bottom. The entire think tank from top to bottom. The entire think tank is in the in U.S. foreign policy between the Pentagon and the Bundestag in Germany is to pivot this pivot long-term military aggression towards China. That's why South Korea has tripled its military equipment exports in the past 4 years. That's why Japan is rapidly militarizing. That's why, and this is the last article I'm going to share with y'all, that's why Taiwan is now working hand in hand to be training with the U.S. military, just like the U.S. military is training Ukrainian soldiers, because rest assured, we have Ukrainian soldiers training on U.S. soil. They're in some training facility in Oklahoma. This is coming for Taiwan as well, to start World War III in the Taiwan Strait. So this is again, I'm not going to read the whole article, but you'll get the idea here of things that Biden doesn't want you to look too closely at, because considering how unpopular the Ukraine war is getting here in the United States, the thought of sending uh, American soldiers onto the other side of the world to fight and die for a country that they have no stake in, for an island that is a part of China, is there's a reason that they do this in secret. U.S. expands training of Taiwanese military with National Guard, and there's a paywall on the there's a paywall on the article, but just saying, I have it on my Telegram channel. The full thing. So if you subscribe to my Telegram channel, congratulations, you can get past a lot of paywalls. Do I have it pulled up? No, I guess I don't have it pulled up on my Telegram. Yeah, just saying, that's these joint training exercises are going to be ramped up, and the implications of this don't just stop in the Taiwan Strait; they come to the U.S. This is not like the effects of this aren't just that the war stays in China, in the Taiwan Strait, in Ukraine. It's already coming onto U.S. soil. The implications of this, we will feel in the next few months as the weather starts to warm up, as we, as we increase our ties with training Ukrainian Nazis, with training Taiwanese soldiers in urban warfare. What do you think Cop City is in Atlanta? 85 acres of land earmarked, and paid for by American corporations like Coca-Cola and Chick-fil-A and Wells Fargo to militarize a federal police force. And and Antifa rioting in the streets of Atlanta, to stop Cop City, when we know how, again, and not to bring up too much historical materialism, but knowing how these things played out in the past is important for predicting how things are going to play out in the future. Of these clearly astroturfed Antifa protests in Atlanta, leading to justifying military crackdowns, in U.S. cities wherever Antifa wants to pop up their head, further encouraging the Democratic Party to militarize and federalize local police forces and use Cop City, a mock city, to train U.S. police in urban warfare. Like, this is the implication for citizens of the United States. Ukraine isn't the Ukraine war isn't staying in Ukraine. The reason we're bringing Ukrainians here to train in urban warfare is because we want to learn how to train our own police forces in urban warfare here against our own citizens. That's what Cop City is. It's not to train police officers to to handle local your local beat cop in how to handle a domestic disturbance, or how to de-escalate conflicts in some in some suburb. It's to defund local police forces and turn local police forces into a federal military, urban military, and train other countries in that facility, just like how we export cops and train them in Ukraine, how we send, not Ukraine, in Israel, how United States cops train under the Israeli Defense Force to learn urban warfare tactics against poor people and black people in inner cities. The trend is to just we don't have to send them to Ukraine anymore. We can send them to Atlanta, to Cop City. We've tested these tactics on the Ukrainian army. We're testing these tactics in Taiwan. Taiwan, being just one big city just an island from from coast to coast on a small island is just one big city. Like urban warfare needs to be a part of the strategy of of the U.S.'s control of of the Taiwanese military. Just turns out to be the perfect laboratory for exporting that system of urban warfare to other countries, including right here to the United States. It's already here. They're already setting the stage for this. The architects of nuclear annihilation are moving that clock further and further to midnight because of events happening in Ukraine, because of the spineless decisions by politicians in Germany like Olaf Scholz to continue this war that could end with a phone call, for Zelensky to just pick up the phone and tell and tell Biden, no, I don't want to send any more unwilling civilians to the front line. I don't want to continue throwing civilians without any training into the Bakhmut meat grinder, like on the front lines of this war. To tell Putin, like, I'm willing to negotiate peace terms. I'm not willing to retake Crimea, forcing forcing Putin to to into a nuclear exchange to defend his own citizens. This is the complete what's the word? The complete, not the offense, but like the initiative. This is the initiative on the part of the United States of the suicidal, uh, you know, the suicidal hegemonists in the United States. Uh, Stop sharing screen. Yeah, let me know what you think, because not wanting to keep my tinfoil hat on for what's coming to the U.S. I mean, at this point, if you are one of the people who supports the Ukraine war, God help you, but you know, we'll see if you're still so supportive of it when those same tactics of urban warfare brought right here into U.S. cities. It's coming. But that's all I got for y'all today. I don't want to drag this on too much. And again, thank y'all. If you had made it this far, I appreciate you in supporting a new news channel. Hopefully, I'll be back tomorrow. It takes some time digging up all these sources of news and assembling everything to be able to bring you this this news from a multipolar world. In the meantime, before we hit midnight tonight, for real, gonna be signing off. And thank you all so much. Remember, it's still in the chat. Sign up, subscribe to the Telegram. So follow me on Twitter at IronSunUSA. Follow me on TikTok at Hard Targets Intel. Subscribe. Let me hear from y'all. Like, what kind of stories do you want to see? What's important to you? I want to know so I can help this channel get bigger. In the meantime, I'm out.